Welcome to the As Yet Untitled Podcast.
With your hosts, Tony and Shaun.
Welcome back to part 2 of our conversation about cool comic characters.
Yep, we're carrying on.
So if you didn't watch or listen to the last episode, we were talking about cool comic characters, not ones from Marvel or DC. So ones that you probably maybe haven't heard of. This week, we're talking about the ones you have heard of. The ones from Marvel and DC. The two big boys.
Yeah, we thought it would be easier to separate them into two parts, as there is quite a big difference between them, and having all of the, what I would call commercial ones together just makes a bit more sense to me. And if we didn't do that, we would have had a very long episode.
Yeah, for sure. We already had to cut loads of characters out. Yeah, if you haven't listened to that, go listen to it. Let us know what you think. We always like to have some feedback from you guys. Yeah, so I guess we'll just jump straight in, right?
Might as well.
Brilliant. All right, I'll kick us off then, right? I'm going to start with Marvel. We'll do all of our Marvel ones, and then we'll go into DC after.
That's not going to work out very well for me.
Why?
I have 2 DC characters.
Okay. Well...
Because I'm not as big into DC as you are.
Well, I'm gonna just... Well, yeah, I'm a big both fan, but I do collect a lot more DC than I do Marvel.
Exactly.
But okay, well, we'll just go with it. See what happens.
My plan was to just go with it.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll start us off then. So my first one, it's one that everyone knows, to be honest, but I love him, and that's Wolverine.
Nice.
Yeah. I love Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. You know, in all of the X-Men films, he literally is Wolverine, and obviously I love the comics too. So, I'll just give you some origin information about him. So, canonically, he's about 137 years old, but he's around 42 physically, right?
Yeah.
His birthday is unknown, the exact birth date is unknown. He's 5'3", and he weighs
Short.
Yeah. And he weighs 300 pounds. And apparently his alignment is chaotic good. Apparently, okay, so that's important.
I'm sorry, I'm just loving the idea of this 5'3" man.
Yeah.
300 pounds.
Well, that's because his entire skeleton is coated with adamantium.
Yeah, I understand.
So
he is essentially made of metal, but
pretty heavy. So he was born James Howlett in Alberta, Canada, in the late 1880s. As the son of wealthy farmers John and Elizabeth Howlett. Although, turns out he's actually the illegitimate son of Howlett's groundskeeper, Thomas Logan. Hence, Logan. After a falling out, Thomas killed John right in front of young James, and in retaliation, he discovered he had retractable bone claws coming out of his fists, and he used them to kill Thomas. Which he then discovered that was his father. So he technically murders his own father after his father kills the person who he believes is his father.
What a backstory.
Yeah, and then he flees from his childhood home with his friend Rose, or in the movie version, it's his brother Sabretooth.
Yeah, I was wondering about that, actually, as you mentioned.
And Sabretooth later becomes his enemy, obviously. But that's in the comics, it was Rose, his childhood friend, and he actually grows into adulthood with her, and he adopts the name Logan, and then accidentally kills Rose by stabbing her with his bone claws.
Oh, yeah.
Which happens a number of times in the films as well, and a number of times in the comics too, where he ends up killing people accidentally because of, sleep, coming out in his sleep or stuff like that. But yeah, so he also discovers that he appears to have some kind of healing abilities and decelerated aging. He manages to survive both world wars, even fighting alongside Captain America.
Aww.
And at one point, he was discovered by a secret military program known as Weapon X, who turned him into a living weapon. So they coated his entire skeleton in a nearly indestructible alloy called adamantium.
Right.
The experiment was successful because, most other people died because of it, but he could survive because he could heal. And he's a badass. So he then was basically trained to be a weapon, and he was called Weapon X. And they used his animalistic instincts and all these things to basically try and turn him into a weapon and get rid of him as a man. But then he escapes and basically slaughters his way out of the program by murdering almost everyone to escape.
Best way to escape something.
Yeah, and then he later gets found by Charles Xavier, who explains that he's a mutant, and he invites him to join the X-Men, which he accepts. So that's how Wolverine becomes part of the X-Men.
Wait, so did you say that he was Project X?
Weapon X.
Weapon X.
Yeah.
So, I know that these are comics and they're written to be, everything happens for a reason, I'm assuming, in comics, and it's just interesting that he's
The
in Weapon
X-Men.
X, meets Charles Xavier, who already has the X-Men.
Yeah. Well, they are called the X-Men because it's Xavier's men, right?
Yeah, but he's Weapon X.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm not gonna get rid of this.
But, well, it's comics, right? It's Marvel. They do this all the time. Yeah, so his mutation is the source of his powers. So his strength, durability, and speed are noticeably much higher than any normal human being. He has godly stamina. He can fight for more than a day straight without tiring. He has a keen sense of smell. He can determine familiar scents with only a couple of sniffs of the air. He's capable to sense shadow ninjas that are actually able to put a drop on Doctor Strange. He can feel the pressure of optic blasts from Cyclops that are coming from behind him and then dodge them with how quick he is. So he can just feel the pressure in the air change behind him if Cyclops was about to shoot him in the head, sort of thing. And then he can dodge it because he's quick as fuck.
Nice.
Yeah. So all these senses make him, really good in fighting, right?
So he does have, animalistic kind of things.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
Yeah, he has all these heightened senses. So he could even, he can fight blindfolded easily. He also has this thing called animal empathy, where he basically has a supernatural ability to detect and sense the emotions of animals around him.
Aww.
Right? So that's why he tends to be, even in the films, nice animals around him. And he ends up living in the wild a lot to be away from humans because humans suck and animals are decent for the most part.
Understandable.
He also obviously has regeneration, accelerated healing factor, which allows him to heal from any wounds, no matter how major or minor. He was once even stripped down to just his skeleton, and it only took him a few minutes to fully regenerate. And he can regenerate his heart in minutes. He also has mental resistance, so because of his abilities, he is nearly immune from mental powers, and he can even escape from the telepathy of Professor Xavier. Because he just can. Because why not? He's a master martial artist because he's lived forever and he's fought in all of these wars and he's learned to be proficient in hand-to-hand combat, sword combat, so he's at the point now where he can easily match Captain America in skill. Skill alone, not just everything else, just the skill. He's also developed and mastered his own unique weapon style using his claws, which supposedly can impress even the most skilled fighters, right? So he's a badass.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, his skeleton is covered in adamantium, which makes him basically indestructible.
So not only can he heal incredibly fast, he's also...
So it's even... That metal makes him basically insanely powerful even against people like Thor and Hulk. Thor and Hulk can barely even dent adamantium. And they're one's a literal god, and the other one is the strongest thing in existence. Right? They can barely dent it. And obviously that adamantium covers its claws, which means it can basically cut through anything.
Nice.
He also once managed to stab Thanos, which is pretty impressive, especially as Thanos was wearing the Infinity Gauntlet at the time. So, yeah. He's done a bunch of awesome things, right? He is so cool. So he has lifted a great white shark. He has snapped a dinosaur's neck. He has staggered the Hulk with a headbutt. He stabbed through the Thing's rocky body.
Oh, Jesus.
Obviously stabbing Thanos is up there.
Yeah.
He can dodge bullets, including those shot by Deadpool. He survived fighting the Hulk. He survived being flattened by the Hulkbuster Iron Man suit. He survived having his heart being exploded from inside him. He also survived a complete nuclear explosion, a kick from Spider-Man, a shield throw from Captain America, a lightning strike from Storm, and a ridiculous amount of other things. Not to mention, he also survived World War I, II, Vietnam War, and he's also never been beaten in a fight by Captain America. And there has also been a time where he's also fought Satan, and he also defeated the Iron Fist.
Mm-hmm.
So he's up there with some of the coolest, right?
Yeah.
He does have weaknesses though, like he needs his brain to survive, otherwise he'll lose his memory.
Right.
Which does happen at the end of the X-Men Origins film.
Yeah.
Despite its, problems with Deadpool, it's still a good film. Yeah, so he's also pretty ill-tempered and angry, so, that can cause problems with working with other people. And also, he's not too great with deep water because, his body is really fucking heavy. So swimming is not too good for him.
Yeah.
He can swim, but not very well because he's heavy as shit. He's also the first ever Canadian superhero from Marvel. They made him on purpose as a Canadian superhero. And you wouldn't think of Wolverine as Canadian because of all of his personality and mannerisms are so unlike the Canadian stereotype.
It's not even just that. I like the idea of them being like, we need more representation in this company. I know what we're going to do. We're going to make a Canadian superhero. Like,
well, this was quite a while ago.
Yeah. It's just such an interesting concept.
Yeah.
They're just gonna...
But yeah, I think he's such an awesome character. All of the films that he's in are really good. Like I said, Hugh Jackman does a brilliant job at portraying him.
There is no way I can think of anyone else who can come close to being him.
I mean, Jay Mewes named his daughter Logan after Wolverine. He's awesome.
Logan does work as a girl's name.
Yeah.
one of those names I never would have thought of it. But yeah.
I have another one that's directly related to this. So should I keep going and you take over afterwards?
Sure, why not?
Yeah, because this one is literally directly linked, and that's Magneto. So, the villain for the X-Men. He's basically one of the only characters that can really easily beat Wolverine. Because, Wolverine's got an adamantium skeleton, which is metal, and Magneto can control metal. So... There's actually a time where Magneto straight up rips all of the adamantium off of his skeleton.
I was actually thinking, I was like, don't we actually see him pull the metal out?
Yeah, he rips the adamantium straight off of his skeleton.
Ew.
Which is pretty disturbing. But yeah, he's an awesome character, right? So he, not only can he control metal, but he can do a bunch of other stuff, which I'm going to go into in a minute. So he's a good guy and a bad guy, which is great. Because, he's a villain because he does stuff, in extreme ways. But when it comes down to it, he just wants to save his species. He wants to save the mutants, which the humans are essentially, treating as outcasts and trying to wipe out. And he wants to save them. That's all he wants to do. Which is not a bad thing by any means. But, he had a very horrible life and upbringing, so it causes him to do it in pretty extreme villainous ways.
Yeah.
And ends up hating humanity because of what they're doing. Yeah. So his original name is Max Eisenhart. That's not his original name. That's what his real name is. He was originally, before that, he was called Eric Magnus Leschen. I can't even say it. Lenscher, I think. So he was born after the events of World War One,
right.
And he was raised in a middle class German family that was unfortunately Jewish. So it meant that him and his family. Ended up in the Auschwitz concentration camp during the events of World War II. He was separated from his family. This is what I mean by his upbringing is pretty horrific. But he managed to survive thanks to his mutant powers. And, he survived unlike the rest of his family and friends that were there. So he survived Auschwitz, and he was then, because they realised he had these powers, they turned him into a weapon, essentially, as people do. He eventually successfully escaped the horrors of Auschwitz, and then encountered more prejudice for being a mutant. Right?
God damn it.
So...
This is a definition of can't catch a break.
Yeah. So he went on to meet Charles Xavier, and they became friends. But one of them is, Charles is way more optimistic than Max, because he was traumatized during the Holocaust. And that shaped his beliefs on how mutant kind should not tolerate humanity, and mutant kind should be superior. Should be treated as superior because they are.
Yeah.
Which kind of makes sense, right?
I mean, if to deny mutants, I was just thinking, if it was to happen, if we was to have mutants now, it just makes sense to keep them alive and not shun them, because in theory they're the next step in evolution.
Yeah, that's the argument, right?
Yeah, exactly. They are the new humanity,
Yeah. So his
Oh,
powers
that's
aren't just controlling metal. He can manipulate magnetic fields. He can project force fields. He has magnetic flight. He can see electromagnetic fields. If he wanted to, he could flip the Earth's magnetic field. He can shoot magnetic rays. And he has full control over literally anything metal down to an atomic level.
Oh.
So it's pretty extreme.
Yeah.
So he can manipulate the electromagnetic spectrum, which is one of his more powerful abilities, right?
Yeah.
Because that's pretty extreme. And he can actually, despite he uses magnetism more than anything else, he can actually manipulate any form of energy within the electromagnetic spectrum. So he's able to use infrared radiation to increase heat. He can absorb or shoot forms of electromagnetic radiation or energy. He can bend light to become invisible. He can project gamma rays, X-rays, visible light, ultraviolet light, and even radio waves to any extent. But he doesn't really use them much because it tires him out. So he mainly sticks with his magnetic powers, which is why you don't really see it that often. And that tends to not really come up in the films, but it comes up in the comics a lot. So he is overpowered as shit. He also has electrokinesis, so he's able to shoot bolts of electricity and absorb bolts of lightning. And he can also project an electric aura around himself to shock enemies. And he can also create wormholes between 2 points in space and time. So he can, traverse impassable distances instantly. It also, it helps a lot that he's a genius.
At that point, I'm sorry. Like, he can see electromagnetic fields. At this point, like, why wouldn't you be a genius? Come on.
Yeah.
You can see things that are barely understood. Like, come on.
Yeah. And he also has a helmet that can protect him from Professor X's psychic powers. So, he's pretty unstoppable. Some of the amazing things that he has done in the comics, well, not necessarily amazing, but pretty, big feats, include, ripping Wolverine's metal skeleton off of him. He lifts a mountain. He lifts and throws submarines and ships. He pulls a satellite out of orbit. He creates earthquakes and volcano eruptions. Drops a 170-ton tower on Iron Man. He held his own against all of the Avengers, and even against Colossus, and lots of other really cool, like, overpowered, characters. And I also really like the depiction of him in X-Men. Like, in the films, he's done really good. Like, the young version and the old version of him are both done really well.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah, I love it. So they're my two X-Men. Wolverine and Magneto, the two coolest by far. Beast is pretty sick too.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I might as well, since we're on a topic of X-Men, mention my honourable mention, which is Mystique, just because I think she's cool. Yeah,
Mystique's pretty cool. And that's like, she works directly underneath Magneto a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, my first one for this seems very underpowered now.
Yeah, I've gone with some pretty heavy hitters.
Doesn't make him any less cool. That's Luke Cage.
Hell yeah.
I only know him from the TV series, the Netflix one that came out a couple years ago, where he's played by Mike Coulter. But that doesn't mean he's not a cool comic character.
No, he's a cool character.
So he first appeared in Luke Cage Hero for Hire. So he first appeared in his own comic that they made for him, written by Archie Goodwin, George Tusker, Roy Thomas, and John Romita Sr. So a lot of people went into the creation of it. And possibly because he was the first black hero to ever be the protagonist and title character of a comic book. So he was the first black superhero in his own, like, comic.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Yeah. Although, this was also put into a time which is called blaxploitation. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
Yeah, so it's where they use stereotypes to an advantage.
Yeah. It was in the 70s where there was a big boom in basically having black characters to appeal to more crowds, and because they were, the first black characters, they were allowed to use a lot of stereotypes.
Yeah. Like a lot of, there was, a lot of 70s cop shows and stuff that were famous for this.
Specifically around those kind of times,
Yeah.
That doesn't mean they didn't do a good job with his comics. So how he got his powers is it was for a series of experiments done on him while he was in prison for a crime he didn't commit.
Yeah.
So these powers are super strength, increased stamina, and then a dense skin that makes him resistant to physical injury.
Like, literally anything.
Almost everything. And in the TV series, it does, like, show why it is considered almost.
I bet adamantium could get through it.
Probably. And also because his skin is just, like, you know, incredible. He also has a faster recovery time when and if he does get injured. Because he's got superpowers.
Yeah.
You don't need to have a reason. So in the TV show, he's shown as more like fighting local crime. He just has beef.
He's a local hero.
Yeah, he's a local hero. He is seen
in Harlem, right?
Yeah, which is like where most of the defenders, in the series are based.
Yeah, in Hell's Kitchen.
Also, just in the comics, they are based around Hell's Kitchen, and yeah. So in the TV series, he doesn't have his costume, which you know. So in the comics, he does have a costume. In the TV series, he doesn't, and that was a conscious choice by the costume designer in the show, because they were showing him more as a working class hero rather than a.
Well, they
superhero.
do that with all of the defenders. They didn't give any of them a full on outfit.
Yeah, like they did do like their little cute nod to it at some point, but yeah. So in the comics, he is a hero for hire, and he also goes by the name Power Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he is a hero for hire, but then in the TV series, it's more like it's him fighting small crime, and then he ends up going up against I can't think of his name.
Cottonmouth.
Yeah, Cotton.
Played by Mahershala Ali, who's really good in that show.
So, like they are really good. Like it's a crime. Like I can't think of what the word is. But yeah, they're bad.
I don't know what do you mean?
They're not like a mob, but they're not like they are powerful guys.
They're just gangsters, right?
Yeah. Well, kind of. Yeah. So yeah, he goes against those in the comics, whereas in the comics it is just him. As long as you can pay him what he wants, he will do what you want him to. Really. And just wanted to quickly mention that I also really enjoyed Jessica Jones, the series on Netflix.
Oh yeah.
And I wanted to also mention it because like she is incredible. I just preferred the Luke Cage series because it has a very different feel to it. Because it feels quite realistic.
It's got a lot. I like that one because it's got a lot of hip hop stuff in it. Like the soundtrack, it's got a lot of like actual hip hop artists that actually take part as like little cameos and that, which is cool. But Jessica Jones is a better show. I have to disagree. Yeah. Like season 1 of Jessica Jones is phenomenal. David Tennant's Kilgrave or Purple Guy is like fantastic.
Yeah,
that was actually one of my honorable mentions.
That's another thing that I've got mentioned here is also just like Kilgrave. But in the comics, Jessica Jones and Luke Cage actually end up getting married and having a child together because she has super strength and he is invincible. So, well, why wouldn't that make a perfect couple? So, yeah, I just wanted to mention that because I thought that was a really cool thing that they don't bring into the TV series. It's not necessary.
No.
But in the comics, obviously, there's a massive expanded universe and anything can happen in the comics. And one of the storylines is that they end up together and have a child. Yeah. But yeah, I do really like Luke Cage because of it does seem more realistic. Like he's fighting local crime. He's had experiments done on him that just essentially just make him have thick skin.
Yeah, it's not very extreme.
Yeah, there's no real like this is completely unbelievable kind of things. Like at a push, you could say it is realistic.
I guess, yeah. Do you have any more from that same universe?
I do, actually. Sorry. Little cough there. And that is...
Is it COVID?
What, from the same universe? Yes. So shall I go for my next one that is in the same universe?
Yeah, I do. Might as well.
Cool. Then I'll also go for Daredevil.
I love Daredevil.
The again, most of my knowledge of this comes from the TV series,
which is pretty good.
Yeah, the TV series is incredible.
It's the best one of any of the Marvel TV series, I reckon.
And it also was the start of them all.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of my knowledge in this entire episode mostly comes from TV series because I don't really read comics. I don't have the time.
Boo.
I don't have the time. I don't have the money. I don't have any access to comic books. You haven't read half of these either.
I've read most of them.
Anyway, Daredevil. So his first appearance in the comics was in Daredevil.
Yeah.
In 1964, which was written by Stan Lee. So
Yeah.
actually by him directly.
He is... 1964 is very close to the beginning of Marvel.
Yeah, so he's very early on in the...
Yeah.
Or in the Marvel universe. So his horrible origin story, like, there's a lot of layers to it, so I'm probably gonna struggle to to explain it. So when he was young, he was blinded by a radioactive substance that fell out of a truck.
Yeah.
So it just it hit him in the eye, he's blinded. And then after that, he gets, what most people actually do get after being blinded, which is heightened other senses, except for the fact that he is being exposed to this radioactive material. His other senses are a lot better, like extreme hearing. And then while he... So now he's a child that's blind, and then he ends up losing his dad because his dad was a boxer, and then he ends up getting into a fight, and he gets killed by gangsters for not throwing the fight. So then Daredevil ends up becoming an orphan.
Yeah.
And then while he's in the orphanage, he ends up meeting... I don't know if it's while he's in the orphanage or a bit later on. I couldn't quite gather this from my research. Where he meets Stick? No, I wrote it down. Maybe I didn't. But he meets a martial artist who trains him in martial arts, and he ends up becoming an incredible martial artist because he has these extra heightened senses, and he also has a reason to now want to fight crime because his dad was killed by gangsters.
Yeah. And when you say heightened senses, it's like to an extreme point of he can see every single thing around him for miles just through his ears.
Yeah, so that is one of the things I was going to say. Like, his abilities are just like superhuman senses, so it is like insane levels of hearing to the point of like hearing people's heartbeats.
He can hear when people are lying.
Yeah, and then there's also, he has echolocative radar sense, which is just using the sounds around him to be able to get an image in his head of what is around him. And that helps him in his fighting because of, as you know from TV and comic books, all crime happens at night. But not only is he, this badass fighter, he also, by day, is a lawyer, which his abilities help him out with in that as well, because...
He can tell when people are lying.
he can tell when people are lying, so he can ask the right questions and, get rid of bad guys in the good way, and then when he doesn't do it, when he can't get rid of bad guys in the lawful way, he beats them up.
As you do.
In the series, he's played by Charlie Cox, who does an amazing job.
Oh yeah, because he's not blind, and he straight up acts as a blind man really well.
Yeah, it actually took me a minute to think, like, is this man blind or not? Like, because he does it in such a good way, but also, like, I feel like it's important to say, in a very respectful way. Like, it's not done
to an
tackily.
extreme.
Yeah, it's not done in an extreme way. It's not done in a tacky way. He does a really good job at it, and just in general, the whole show is really good. It is one of the best ones out of the whole Defenders series.
Yeah, Wilson is possibly my favourite portrayal of Wilson Fisk.
Oh yeah,
they do a really good job with Wilson Fisk.
Yeah, so.
Do you have anything else to add about Daredevil?
No.
No.
Just other than the fact that there is the film, but we don't acknowledge that the film exists.
I used to have that on VHS.
I used to have it on DVD.
It's not good.
But we don't acknowledge that it exists.
Alright, so, I mean, my next one is even earlier than that.
Yeah.
And it's kind of directly related in many ways.
Okay.
Because they share a lot of the same villains, including Fisk. So, I mean, this list couldn't have been done without this. This is the start of it all. This is Stan Lee. This is Marvel.
Right.
Spider-Man. I could not. There's no way I couldn't talk about Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Like it's physically impossible to like comics and not love Spider-Man.
Yeah, that's true.
It's essentially what created Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, and all of Marvel. And it's been given to us in like a ridiculous amount of comic portrayals, films, games, TV shows, ridiculous amount of merch, all kinds of things. Like, I loved Spider-Man as a kid. I actually had a Spider-Man costume that I wore all the time, and my next door neighbour had a Batman one.
I did not know this.
Shout out to Shaun next door. Yes, my neighbour as a child was also called Shaun. Yeah, so the first appearance of Spider-Man was in Amazing Fantasy number 15 in August 1962.
Damn.
Created by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, in case you didn't know. Two of the greatest people that have ever lived, in my opinion. And yeah, Spider-Man's alter ego, Peter Benjamin Parker, from Queens, New York.
They always are.
Some of the teams he's been affiliated with are the Avengers, Fantastic Four, the Defenders, Future Foundation, Daily Bugle, Jean Grey School for Higher Learning, League of Realms, Mighty Avengers, New Avengers, S.H.I.E.L.D., Spider Army, Web Warriors, and many more. He's also had partnerships with Spider-Woman, aka Gwen Stacy, partnerships with Miles Morales, Spider-Man, Black Cat, Daredevil, Deadpool, Iron Man, Silk, loads of others. Some of his powers include genius intellect. Not necessarily powers, but his abilities as a human, right? He's a genius, he's a proficient scientist and inventor. He has superhuman strength, speed, durability, agility, stamina, insane reflexes and reactions, coordination, balance, and endurance. He also has a precognitive spider sensibility, which basically tells him if there's like danger around or anything like that. It's kind of like, it's just like a sixth sense sort of thing, right? He also can cling to most solid surfaces, and he has a webbing ability, or in some of them he has web shooters that he designs himself.
But then also that just goes into the fact that he is a genius and then figured out a way to make it.
Yeah, exactly. So you all know the origin story of Spider-Man, so I'm not going to go into all that. There's no point. Everyone knows it, right?
Speaking of Into the Spider-Verse, which we literally watched yesterday, and it's just like, you all know the story. Gets bit by a spider, Uncle Ben dies.
Yeah, the usual. Into the Spider-Verse actually is possibly my favourite Marvel film of all time. It is a phenomenal film. I love it. It does an
incredible job for just comic movies, and it actually is like what I want all comic movies to be, because of it's so
perfect. Good. Okay, so my favourite versions of Spider-Man are of course the many comic versions, but I also love Spider-Verse, Miles Morales version, and I was brought up on Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. Also, Tom Holland does a really good job in the MCU as well.
So we're just ignoring Andrew Garfield here.
Yeah, I'm not a massive fan of Andrew Garfield's version.
I don't even remember those.
yeah, I've blocked most of it out. Okay, so what I love most about Spider-Man is that despite his obvious superhuman abilities, he's just a funny, nerdy kid who like makes quips while he's beating up these ridiculous villains. He has like awesome parkour and action abilities, which are just really fun to watch in screen adaptations and to also play as in video games. The PS4 game was really fun, and I also had
a PS4 game.
I also had a PS1 game, which was really good as well. And he has all of these like really cool Batman-like gadgets that he builds, which adds so much to the capabilities of what he can do as a character.
Yeah.
Okay, so some of the awesome things that he's done, and there's been loads because it's been around for a long time. So he's beat up Hulk. He's beat Wolverine. He's beat Captain America even while blindfolded. He has an IQ of 250, and it's been and his intelligence has been acknowledged by Reed Richards and by Hank Pym, two of the smartest people in the Marvel Universe. He is an honorary member of the Fantastic Four and the Avengers. He held his own against all of the Fantastic Four and all of the X-Men. He also didn't flinch when he got punched in the face by the Punisher. And he regularly takes hits from godlike villains and can run up to 250 miles per hour, dodge automatic gunfire, And he does all of this while making funny teenage quips and taunting his enemies.
Yeah.
It's just awesome, right? What's not to love? He is, like, if it wasn't for Spider-Man, in my childhood, I don't think I would be the way I am today.
Yeah.
It created the sarcasm and the wittiness and my obsession with climbing things despite not being very good at it. And I think if I could be any superhero, Spider-Man's high on the list.
Oh, yeah.
You got anything related?
Exactly related, actually.
Okay.
I actually specifically looked at Miles Morales.
The newest of the Spider-Men.
Yeah, so me growing up being a girl and not reading comic books or anything, I didn't really see much of Spider-Man growing up.
Boo.
Can you stop? You're the one who wanted this. So when I saw Into the Spider-Verse, I was like, okay, this is awesome. But it was also...
Understatement.
yeah. It's the first time I got to see a character and like a comic book character that I knew absolutely nothing about. There was no knowledge beforehand that I needed.
Not of Spider-Man, of Miles Morales.
Yeah, of Miles Morales. Like with Spider-Man, I feel like there was always kind of like you're supposed to know certain things about him in a way.
Yeah, it's an iconic part of culture.
because he's iconic. So like, there's always going to be an element of his character that you always that you're just expected to know.
Yeah.
Whereas with Miles Morales, he was introduced to the Marvel Universe in 2011.
Yeah.
So he did come out. He was like a character a bit before the film came out.
Yeah.
So he first appeared in Ultimate Fallout, and he was created by Brian Michael Bendis, or Bendy, and Sarah Pichelli. Or Sarah. It's always hard to tell. You never know with some people. And he is the replacement for Spider-Man after he dies in the Ultimate Fallout comics. Sorry, lump in my throat. It's real sad thinking about Spider-Man dying. So he basically is the heir to the name Spider-Man in his universe, which is actually in Earth 1601, I believe.
Yeah, there's many in the multiverse.
There's quite a few. So because he got his powers in a very similar way, bitten by a radioactive / genetically enhanced spider.
Yeah.
And getting all of these Spidey abilities. But one of the things I find quite interesting about him is he also gets his own characters. Characters? Character traits and abilities. Which include camouflage or invisibility, depends on how you're seeing it, because of, spiders can have camouflage, but it's actually more depicted as invisibility. And then a bioelectric energy threads that come from his fingers, so he can electrocute people or things. Which I just think is really cool that he just gets these extra abilities, because,
why not?
Screw you guys.
Everything that can be done with Spider-Man's already been written. Let's give him some more powers.
Yeah. There was controversy about his release, because people were like, no, if Spider-Man's gonna die, we should let him die. And I was like, I can understand that. And there was also...
But the whole point in the Spider-Man story is that anyone can be Spider-Man. That was the whole thing that Stan Lee and Steve Ditko wanted.
Yeah. I think it's just having the courage and bravery to put on the mask and do the right thing.
Yeah.
But it was also because people were saying that it was a publicity stunt on Marvel's part.
Because it's a new Spider-Man, it's a black kid.
He is a child of colour, so technically I don't know, it depends on how people feel about this, but he is a biracial character because his dad is black but his mum is Hispanic.
Okay.
But with all this controversy, Stan Lee was in full support of the character, which I think is the only validity.
That's the only opinion that's warranted.
Yeah, it's the only validation that is needed, because it's the creator being like, no, this is perfectly acceptable. And he said it's because it would be a good representation for young children of colour. Yeah. Because Miles Morales is a teenager, not even just a young adult. He is 16.
Yeah, which was what Spider-Man was normally anyway.
So it's just so Stanley was in full support, and then there was also someone else was like, because people were like, oh, it's just a publicity stunt, it's not going to last forever, and they was like, oh, you can just base your opinion on the quality of the comics first, and then you're allowed to say whether or not it's bad.
Who cares if Spider-Man's black, or if it is a publicity stunt, or any of this crap? Like, who cares? Is it good? Is it a good character? Is it a good comic?
So
that's all that matters.
Yeah, but I think Miles Morales is a really cool character.
Yeah,
he's adorable, and he also does have that. Like, before becoming Spider-Man, he also has, and like, he is incredibly intelligent as well. Yeah. So he already has the intelligence and the quippy attitude to life. So it is a direct just passing it on and evolving what Spider-Man is. And I love that.
Well, while we're on the topic of Spider-Man,
right?
I also have some of his enemies.
Right.
So, I love a lot of the Spider-Man enemies. There's a lot of really clever ones. You know, Doc Ock, Kingpin, Sandman. Like, there's so many good ones. But particularly my favorite ones are the symbiotes, Venom and Carnage.
All right, yeah.
There are other symbiotes, but they're my two favorite ones. They're the two most infamous of them. So the symbiotes are also known as Clintars. They're an alien race of parasites. So the symbiotes envelop their hosts like costumes, creating a parasitic bond through which the host's mind can be influenced. Symbiotes are fully aware and sentient creatures. They are also vicious and wild, compelling their human hosts to violence. They're much more effective if the human host has the same feelings and urges as a symbiote. For example, the Venom symbiote bonded successfully with Eddie Brock because they shared anger and desires for revenge towards Spider-Man. And this shows, you know, symbiotes are able to project their own emotions and personal desires, in addition to reflecting and reacting to the emotions and desires of the host.
Yeah.
So they kind of go together, right?
Yeah.
Venom proved to be a particularly malicious foe against Spider-Man. So he actually broke several laws in pursuit of revenge against Spider-Man. On one occasion, while Brock was incarcerated for his crimes as Venom, and he patiently waits. He's patiently waiting to be escaped. To I can't speak. To be
released.
Not released. To be escaped to help with his liberation by Venom.
Be liberated.
Yeah, he wants Venom. He's waiting to be freed by Venom.
Right.
For Venom to come in and break him out. Right.
It took a while, but we got there.
Yeah. So when Venom goes in there to free him, it happens that Eddie Brock is sharing a cell with a multiple murderer called Cletus Cassidy. The symbiote did in fact liberate Brock, but in doing so, it left behind its spawn, which is basically like a little baby symbiote, which then bonds with Cassidy, turning him into the lethal villain Carnage.
Yes.
Because Cassidy bonded with the symbiote on a cellular level, which is something that Eddie Brock refused to do with Venom. So that Venom is kind of like a suit with Brock, and they're working together and they're feeding from each other. But Cassidy bonded with it on a cellular level, basically just becoming it. It is way more powerful than Venom or Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And the two, so Venom and Spider-Man, actually form an uneasy alliance to deal with Carnage. Bear in mind, Venom is very much a villain, but Carnage was way more of a problem at that point. Yeah. To both of them.
Yeah.
So the Carnage symbiote was capable of greater control of its constituent matter than Venom could do. So at one point it managed to travel by telephone line by thinning itself into a single strand that's one cell wide. It could also form solid appendages, allowing Carnage to form things like spikes, blades, and axe heads at will, like at the end of its arm and stuff like that.
Right.
And it appears to be more dense than Venom as well, allowing its host to become more durable and stronger than the Venom symbiote would be able to do. So there's other symbiotes, but I'm not going to go into that too much because there's quite a lot of them. So Venom's first appearance was as the alien costume in The Amazing Spider-Man 252 in May 1984. Venom also appears in The Amazing Spider-Man 299, then the full appearance in Amazing Spider-Man 300. And and that was created by Randy Schuler, Roger Stern, Tom DeFalco, Mike Zeck, and Ron Frenz. There is an insane amount of Venom comics, so I'm not going to go into them all, but there's actually a whole Venom verse,
Right.
which is incredible. Like, so there's like loads of different comics about different things and people and all kinds of things that have been infected by Venom and other symbiotes, and they're really cool. Definitely recommend some of them. I've only read a few, but they are really cool.
Yeah.
But I mean, I love Venom's personality more than anything else. Which, I mean, to be fair, it does change because it adapts depending on the host.
Yeah.
But the most famous one is, Spider-Man being the first host of Venom.
Yeah.
On Earth, anyway. He has hosts before that. But on Earth, Spider-Man was his first host. Hence why he ends up having the spider pattern on his chest.
Yeah.
So he gets a lot of the personality from Spider-Man, and then he goes to Eddie Brock. So then Venom gets this like taunting, witty, quip-like personality, except it's way more sadistic than Spider-Man because of just the natural violence of symbiotes. Also, the symbiotes gain any abilities that the host has, as well as camouflage, mimicry, wall crawling, webbing, creating tendrils, shaping its body to other forms such as weapons. They have increased durability, strength, stamina, regeneration, and it can also recall memories from all of its prior hosts, so it can become pretty intelligent.
Yeah.
And it also can manipulate its host's biochemistry and thoughts or emotions, and tons of other things depending on the host and the specific comic or the type of symbiote.
Right.
But they're just really cool. Carnage first appeared in The Amazing Spider-Man 359 in 1992, so a lot later, as a cameo, and it made a full appearance in The Amazing Spider-Man 361 in 1992 as well. And he was created by David Michelini and Mark Bagley. Carnage is a way more evil and insane version of Venom, due to its first host being serial killer madman Cletus Cassidy, as I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And it's an enemy to both Venom and Spider-Man, as I mentioned earlier. It's stronger than Venom, because it fully genetically attaches to its host, whereas Venom likes to live symbiotically. Carnage is like the red one, right?
Yeah.
Venom's the black one, just so in case you didn't know. Carnage hasn't really had a movie adaptation yet. In the Venom film, he was kind of referenced on it. I think it's coming out in the sequel, but the Venom film was pretty terrible, so...
Hey, I didn't mind it.
It was... no, not... Venom hasn't really had an on-screen appearance that's been that good. In the Tobey Maguire ones, Venom was okay, and in Tom Hardy's version, it was also okay, but nothing's been done perfectly yet. But yeah, so that's Venom and Carnage. I just love them. They have great personalities, great personalities. They their skills are cool. They tend to be funny, and they go really well with the nature of Spider-Man. I love them.
See, I have a specific... Like, I want there to be a Carnage film because of the actor in which they got to play
Cletus Cassidy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I will always have a soft spot in my heart for Woody Harrelson.
Yeah.
And I would just love to see him go off the rails.
Yeah, I mean, it would be cool to see a full-on symbiote thing, because the other symbiotes are also cool, because they end up getting attached to, like, a group of mercenaries, essentially.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it gets pretty mad.
Yeah.
Alright, you got anything else that can be directly related to this? In fact, no, I think I can guess one that's on your list that's directly related.
In a way.
As a villain or / anti-hero, people that work alongside Spider-Man and Daredevil and stuff like that all the time. There's a couple.
Yeah, there are a few people, but first I wanted to ask, is that the last of your Marvel characters?
No.
Okay. I think I have 4 more characters on mine. I don't know how this has happened.
I have one more on Marvel.
Right.
Like, one more big one on Marvel, and then a couple of ones I just want to mention.
Okay. So, my next one, I feel like is related to Spider... I don't know.
Right, I guarantee you've got Punisher on your list.
I do,
And Punisher is directly related to this.
I was leaving that for a special last one.
Well, I'm not doing mine in any kind of order of how much I love them, because I can't do that.
But I wanted to leave it for a special last one.
Well, you can leave it as a
He's
special...
my main man.
Right, stay tuned for Punisher later.
No, we're here now. Gosh.
Go on then.
So yes, the Punisher, also known as Frank Castle.
One of my favourite all-time anti-heroes.
Yeah.
I love him.
And also, the reason I have the nickname Frank from Shaun's father, as my name is Tony Castle. So I am Frank.
Yeah, why not?
So, he was first introduced in the Amazing Spider-Man comics.
Yeah.
Obviously. His episode was...
Issue.
Was released in 1974, so it's actually like a lot older than I thought, but then at the same time I have a very weird like concept of time when it comes to comics and how old they are.
Yeah.
So it was created by Jerry Conway and John Romita Sr. and Ross Andrew.
Although they aren't the most they haven't done the most famous adaptations of him.
No, but it was like
him.
these are they're the ones that created him and the way that he looks basically, because obviously
Yeah,
you have
they designed the
you
character.
have one person who makes it and that's it. So you can't really unless you're Harley Quinn and you just keep changing what you look like because you're Harley Quinn and you're off the rails.
Not quite, but okay.
So the Punisher is a vigilante, so it depends on how you feel to if he is an anti-hero or...
Well, he's been a hero and villain,
Yeah.
depending on what,
Depends on your perspective at the time.
Yeah.
So he is classified as a vigilante who has very controversial methods in his fight against crime, because when you think about it, every way that he attacks like criminals is a more heinous crime than most things.
He just straight up kills them. He's unlike most superheroes. He will just straight up kill.
He will just kill
bad guys.
Yeah, he just kills people that he believes deserves to die, and he has a pretty good moral compass.
I agree entirely.
I say controversial because he is trained in many fields, but he is fueled by the murder of his wife and kids, who in the comics were murdered by the mob for witnessing a crime, whereas in the TV series, which is also on Netflix,
which is also really good.
The
best portrayal of Frank Castle that there has been so far.
Oh, definitely.
On TV shows.
Yeah, so the TV show has it a bit different, which ties in more to the rest of the storyline of the TV show. I feel like I'm going to give spoilers as if this hasn't been out for like multiple years. So possibly spoiler alert if you're planning on watching Punisher. But it's like it is also like the military, isn't it, that kills his family because of to hide him more, really. I can't think of... It's a very complicated story.
It's not that complicated. You are making it more complicated.
But yeah, so he is military trained, and that's one thing that I really...
Special forces.
That's one thing I really like about him. He doesn't have any abilities that came from like an outside force. Yeah. He's not like, not put into a vat of acid or anything. Everything he got is basically from himself.
Yeah, he isn't super in any way. Yeah. He is just a badass guy.
So, he's trained in many different fields. He started his training in the Marine Corps and then goes on to being in special ops, and then from there he gets multiple different training, like being a pilot, and like the list goes on. And it was so long that I was like, I'm not gonna read this. Like, I'm not gonna go through this entire list.
He's had like every kind of training that you can get in special forces.
He's also trained in many different types of martial arts, like 8 different types of martial arts.
Yeah.
And also just other hand-to-hand combat, which he picks up throughout the way. But also this training has led on to some other knock-on abilities, which includes his strong will and strong mind, which has actually stopped him has actually given him a resistance to psychic and telepathic attacks.
Yeah.
So he has, at one point, like, had someone try and use, like, telepathy against him, and when when they asked him how does it feel, he literally said to him, like any other day.
Yeah.
I'm just like, that's just beautiful.
He is as dark and as edgy and as, like, badass as Marvel has done, I think.
Like, he's
way more of a DC style character.
Yeah. He has nothing left to lose. Like, he has that kind of a attitude in life.
Yeah. He's just there to punish people, to kill people that have done wrong.
Yeah, because he has a very strong moral compass, and that even goes against some of his own training. Like, the people who he worked with, like, in the Marine Corps, like, in the military, he also does believe that the people in that aren't always the good guys, which is very, in a weird way of saying it, I feel like is anti-American, because you know how they feel.
Yeah, it's nothing to do with patriotism or anything like that. It's straight up
just like,
good or bad. Doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah.
Which goes against the normal kind of military training and what they would expect.
So, as I said, I've only seen his depiction in the Netflix series, where he's played by John Bernthal, and it is incredible. Like, it has the exact perfect amount of brutality to really make him shine as a character in a way, like, and it's actually one of the only shows because technically he is also in the Defenders kind of universe.
He actually showed up in the Daredevil TV series before he showed up in...
Doesn't he also show up in Jessica Jones?
I'm
not sure.
I can't remember. He shows up in a couple.
He just shows up. So he is, like, this version is in the Defenders universe. But it actually shows a lot more brutality, which, like, actually showing it to you, which... my specific, like, going back specifically to the mirror scene at the end of season 1, which haunts me. Every time I think of the Punisher, this is like the second thought that comes into my head, and it makes me cringe every single time.
Brilliant.
But it's done so well.
The Punisher as a character is amazing, because he is, like, he shows up as an enemy against Spider-Man, against Daredevil, against all of these, like, proper good guys, and yet he's still only killing people that deserve to die. So a lot of these heroes kind of empathize with him in many ways, but obviously they all believe that you shouldn't kill, so they all try and stop him, and that's the only way that he really becomes a bad guy, is because they're trying to stop him from murdering these people, even though they deserve to be murdered.
Morally, and, like, in a way, he is the bad guy, but that's the thing, like, that's why I love him, because in what I feel like most people's standards, he shouldn't be the bad guy.
Yeah.
Like, murdering, like, a child rapist. Like, perfectly okay. He's doing a good job. He's doing the right thing.
Yeah. Killing someone who kills innocent people is, Yeah.
So, that's why I think he's brilliant.
Yeah. He's one of my favourite characters of all time, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, have you got any other Marvel ones that are directly related to that?
Not directly related, but I have one more Marvel one.
Okay, I'll go for one.
Yeah.
So this is my final Marvel one. I love it. And again, this is one that almost everyone knows. Hulk.
Oh, yeah.
So, first appearance was in The Incredible Hulk #1 in May 1962. So, one of the first Marvel characters. Created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. So, the Hulk is Dr. Robert Bruce Banner. He's a Green Goliath superhero from Marvel Comics. He's one of the founding members of the Avengers. He's also Marvel's strongest powerhouse. He's a genius when he's Bruce, but he has little control over turning into the Hulk, which is just an uncontrollable beast. Hulk has the strength to beat gods, jump hundreds of feet into the air, create shockwaves by clapping. He can take any hit. He's taken hits that can level planets and continued fighting. Gamma energy makes him stronger, as it's what created him. He also regenerates and is unkillable. Also, all of his abilities get stronger the angrier he is. Also, he's able to see ghosts and even Doctor Strange's astral projection, which basically no one else can see. The Hulk's body also adapts to survive pretty much anything, so he can even survive in the vacuum of space. And I imagine he'd get very angry out there. So he'd just be getting angry and angry until he lands on the planet and the planet just blows up with one punch or something.
And he ends up back at square one.
He is weak to adamantium.
Oh.
And he's pretty stupid when he's the Hulk, so he can be easily manipulated or tricked. And because of the rage and low intellect, teamwork is basically impossible.
Unless you're watching the most recent Avengers.
Well, there has been some
Yeah.
other comics where he's gained control. He's become like Bruce Hulk, like he's both at the same time. But that is not the norm. So some of the amazing things he's done in the comics include lifting a mountain range, destroying an entire planet, nearly sinking the entire east coast of America with a single step, holding together a falling apart planet, tearing off Ultron's arm, cracking a statue of pure adamantium, pulling continental plates apart, and also another time holding them together, clapping so that it creates a shockwave as powerful as a nuke, clapping hard enough to take down Dormammu. Dormammu is the big like god of chaos thing from Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
He jumps into orbit, got Juggernaut to his knees with 2 blows, throwing someone into space, running up to 400 miles per hour. He's defeated Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, all at the same time. Catching a bullet in his teeth from a point-blank shot.
Wasn't that the one that he did himself?
Yeah, depending on the story. Also, Hawkeye's arrows have failed to pierce his eyes. So an arrow to his eye doesn't pierce the eye. He survived laser hits from Galactus. He can swim for days on end. He survived 50,000 volts of electricity. He survived Ghost Rider's Hellfire, walking through lava, taking lightning hits from Thor. He survived a nuke designed specifically to kill him. He survived heat more than the sun's temperature. And he's also commonly known as the strongest hero that there is, or the strongest there is.
Yeah.
So yeah, if that's not enough to love the character, you know.
No.
Yeah. He's just awesome. He
really is.
He is a superlative. Oh, also, his character is based off of Jekyll and Hyde.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah. I also really love the cartoon version of him, or the cartoon versions of him that have been done. I love the game. The MCU film versions of Hulk are really good as well.
Yeah, I really like him being played by Mark Ruffalo.
Yeah. He gets made into a bit of a weak ass bitch in the MCU films. Like, he could easily take down Thanos, and they don't really.
So do most of the people in the MCU.
Yeah, but especially Hulk.
Yeah.
They make Hulk pretty weak in the films. Also, I just love that as a character, most of the conflict in the comics is actually the struggle between Bruce and Hulk. So it's like Bruce trying to control the monster and control his rage, and like it's more about the self-control and trying to live with himself more than actually fighting enemies.
Yeah.
And I just love that as a concept. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, because no matter how big of a problem he will ever go against, it will still be the biggest problem he will have is him.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like sad and beautiful.
It's just like, brilliant.
Nothing actually phases him other than him.
Yeah. How many more have you got left?
So I have 3 more, but only one is a Marvel character.
Okay, well, take your last Marvel one, and then I've got a couple of honorable mentions I want to mention on Marvel.
My last Marvel one actually fits in very well.
Oh, nice.
To the Hulk, and that is a real G. He was mentioned earlier.
Okay. So
he fits in very well, actually, when you think of it, to every single Marvel character. Because it's Deadpool.
Yeah.
So
he's in the X-Men universe, he's in the Avengers universe, he's in all of them.
Yep.
He does what he wants.
In fact, like Deadpool is known as being the fourth wall breaker.
Yeah.
But doesn't he he's been alive for 800 years, he has been shown to live up to at least 100 years old. And he has nothing to lose in life. So this is why he also is known as a very sexually promiscuous character, in which at one point he is shown flirting, if not actually being with Wolverine, and definitely trying it with Punisher.
Yeah. Which I imagine Frank wasn't too happy with.
I mean, he could have been flattered, but he doesn't want to be with anyone other than his wife.
Oh no, Frank Castle has been pretty promiscuous too.
Has he?
Yeah.
Huh. It's fine. Anyway, Deadpool is brilliant. So, he first appears in the New Mutants comics in his issue in 1991, created by, oh my god, I'm not going to get this right, Fabian Michiza? Oh god. And Rob Liefeld. So he was originally written as a villain.
Yeah.
Like, as most people know. But then as he got more popular and he got his own series, he then got his more... he developed into an anti-hero rather than being the villain, because he didn't really fit into the villain stereotype.
That's the same as most anti-heroes, to be fair.
Yeah.
They're created as a villain, and then people love them, so they become more.
Yeah.
Because Hulk was created originally as kind of a bad guy. So was Punisher. So was a lot of these different kind of anti-heroes that you think of, or even heroes sometimes.
Yeah.
With Hulk.
So, it was mostly because of his character type his personality didn't fit the stereotype of the time for being a villain. And also, this apparently at the time it was very popular to have anti-heroes. That was in the peak. Characters are going to be anti-heroes because we want the dark side and the light side of a character. So I just it's just cool that they managed to make him into an anti-hero.
Yeah.
And then, as we've mentioned, he shows up in a lot of things. But mostly I know him from the films in which he's in, which does include the X-Men Origins film, in which he first shows up as the villain, which I think is actually kind of cool when you look back at it. It's like, oh, he was originally shown as a villain, and then he becomes an anti-hero, which is exactly how he is in the films. So yeah, he's portrayed as by Ryan Reynolds in both.
Well, yeah, because even in the comics, they actually describe him.
I have that written down here. So someone asks him what he looks like underneath the mask, and he says, like Ryan Reynolds crossed with a Shar-Pei.
That's
and
wonderful.
That is actually why Ryan Reynolds, as soon as they were casting for Deadpool, said he wanted to do it. And that's probably why they got him to do such a bad version of him.
Originally, yeah. In the origin, it was a bad Deadpool.
And obviously,
great film, but bad Deadpool.
Obviously, fans of the comics were like, this isn't good enough.
Yeah.
we want the real Deadpool. And obviously that is just Ryan Reynolds perfectly. Also, just one thing I feel like is important to know. In the comics, when they say he looks like Ryan Reynolds, they spell his name wrong. So it's Ryan Reynolds, but then Reynolds without a Y.
Yeah.
In the comics.
Probably on purpose.
Yeah, possibly just to be like, oh, we can get away with it.
Just to cover their backs a little bit.
So his abilities, it's like he has super regeneration.
Yeah.
Like, that is essentially it.
Yeah. Same as Wolverine.
Yeah, same as Wolverine. And this happened because he had terminal cancer, and he found what was supposed to be a treatment for it. So then he goes thinking he's going to get treated for cancer, and then he ends up getting the super regeneration, which basically makes him immortal because it's constantly making him new.
Yeah.
So it does.
It's an even more extreme version of the Wolverine one,
because it will even regenerate his brain. Like, he is his brain is constantly renewing itself.
Yeah.
So
he can't even lose his memories.
Yeah, he can't lose anything. It just will grow back and keep growing back and making new cells, so that nothing on him dies, and that's why he is essentially immortal.
Yeah.
And why I feel like it's important to say, like, it is connected to the Hulk, because in one time he was actually technically, I guess you could call it, killed by the Hulk, because the Hulk crushed his skull. The Hulk decapitated him.
Yeah.
And just grew back. It took a while. But it grew back. So part of his regeneration actually depends on himself. So it's how his mindset is at the time, which I think is a really good thing about, like, you know, he's a very quirky, upbeat character. Because if he's in a good mindset, he will regenerate faster. So if he is awake, fully alert, and just in general in good spirits, he will regenerate faster. Which I just think is just kind of... it's nice. There could almost be like a little like story behind that, but as well as having these ability to regenerate, he is also a highly trained mercenary and assassin. He is trained in, I forgot the name of it, to use his swords that he has.
Yeah.
He actually is specifically trained in how to use his swords, which is...
And guns.
Yeah, and guns. And
most weapons.
But specifically, like, it is a specialist skill with his swords. And yeah, he just he just shows up all over the place, and that's why he has like got his fourth wall breaking kind of.
Yeah, he regularly talks to the camera or to the reader of the comic.
Yeah, and not even just in that, like showing up where he's not meant to be.
Yeah.
Or things like in the films having a picture of Hugh Jackman on his wall.
Yeah.
And bits like that. Like, he is just, in general, an amazing character. I love what Ryan Reynolds did with him.
Yeah.
The second film wasn't as good as the first one.
Yeah.
But that's just because the first one, it was so different.
Yeah.
That they couldn't do a good job with the second one after.
Well, it was still decent.
It was still decent, but like, come on.
Yeah.
The
hard.
standards were so high. But yeah, so that's all of my Marvel characters.
Okay, so I've just got a few honorable mentions I wanted to mention. So, Loki.
Yep.
I love Loki as a villain. It's great. Doctor Doom. I also love Doctor Doom as a villain. Also, MF Doom is an awesome hip-hop artist. Jessica Jones and Kilgrave. We mentioned those earlier. Iron Man. I love Iron Man. Doc Ock from Spider-Man. Rocket and Groot from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yep.
I haven't read the comics for those, but I love them in the film. I think they're a great duo.
Yeah.
And they're really funny. Yeah, they're my main honorable mentions. I could list loads more Marvel characters, but I want to try and keep it short because we've still got our DC ones to do. How many DC have you got?
I've only got the 2.
I've only got... Well...
I've only got 10.
I could say 2.
Okay.
No, it's more than 2, probably.
Would you like to go... Well, yeah, you go now, since you have more.
Okay. I'm not sure who I should start with here. I guess, as you've mentioned, Deadpool. I'm going to go with another fourth wall breaker.
Right.
This is probably my most favourite character of all time.
Right. I know who this is.
I collect all of the comics. I have a scary amount of comics. And I love her. Harley Quinn. It may be a bit basic to some of you out there, but Harley Quinn is the fucking best, alright?
I can agree with this.
I love the Kelly Cuoco TV show. I love Margot Robbie's film version. I love all of the comics, all of the Amanda Conner comics. I love literally every reincarnation
Can
of
I
her.
quickly tell you something about the Kaylee Cuoco versus Margot Robbie thing that I have found out recently about?
Okay.
So the TV execs on the show actually made up this rumor that Margot Robbie wanted to do the voice of the animated TV series as well as doing the live action. Because she just absolutely loves playing Harley Quinn.
Yeah.
But then when they made a TV series, they hired Kaylee Cuoco.
Yeah.
And then they actually made up beef between the two of them, saying that they were, fighting over the show and stuff like that, and fighting over who's the real Harley Quinn.
Just for
I don't know, for some kind of attention.
Yeah.
But Kaylee Cuoco did an interview and was like, I've never met Margot Robbie in my life. It's like, I don't understand why I would have any problems because we're both Harley Quinn.
I mean, to be
Why
fair,
not?
they could have just got Tara Strong to do it because she was the original voice actor of Harley Quinn, and she's the best voice actor there is.
Back to our favourite animated TV shows.
Episode, yeah, you should definitely watch that. That one's only on YouTube, but you should go check it out.
Yep, and you will find out just how much Shaun loves
Tara Strong. Alright, so back to Harley Quinn.
Sorry.
So real name Harleen Frances Quinzel. First appearance was in the Batman animated series, the TV show. And the first one in the comics was Batman Adventures number 12, created by Paul Dini and Bruce Timm. She has affiliations with Poison Ivy, Joker, Catwoman, Batman, Justice League of Anarchy, Suicide Squad, and so on. Her abilities are high intelligence, exceptional agility and strength, immunity to most toxins, she's a psychiatrist, a skilled gymnast, an exceptional hand-to-hand combatant, and an all-round badass. So she's been portrayed by loads of people. So voice actors that have portrayed her, Arlene Sorkin, Hynden Walsh, Tara Strong, Jenny Slate, Laura Post, Melissa Rauch, and Kaylee Cuoco, mainly because there's been loads of games and stuff where she's been in. She's also been played by Mia Sara, Margot Robbie, and I think that's it for the most part. So she has a gifted intellect. Despite being somewhat absent-minded as a character, she's shown to be highly trained in psychiatry. So she completed her psychiatry residency at Arkham Asylum, and she's a trained psychiatrist in both fields of psychoanalysis and criminology. And that's where she meets the Joker.
Yeah.
She's an expert combatant. She's known as using her skills in combat as a criminal and her gymnastics to help her in her fights as well. She's also a master acrobat, which rival those of Catwoman and Nightwing.
Oof.
And her toxic immunity is a result of Poison Ivy's treatment. So Poison Ivy basically made her immune to various toxins, including Poison Ivy's own poisonous touch.
Aww.
Hence their relationship being so close. She also has enhanced strength and stamina, thanks to injections given to her by Poison Ivy again. So she's mostly commonly known by using weapons, right? She uses very Joker party gag style weapons, including a baseball bat, a giant gag mallet, knives, pop pistols, missile firing pistols, and she tends to use a lot of blunt weapons. It's just really fun. So she's been in loads of teams like Suicide Squad, Birds of Prey, Justice League, Gotham City Sirens, Secret Six, Secret Society of Supervillains, and also Legion of Doom. My favourite depictions of Harley are mostly from Amanda Connor's brilliant Harley Quinn comic series, which is finished now, unfortunately, but there is a lot of issues out there, and you should read all of them. I have all of them, and they're incredible. She's living in Coney Island, and she's trying to be a good person after escaping the Joker and realising that he was just an abusive arsehole. The series is full of amazing cameos, crossovers, loads of hilarious sexual innuendos, jokes, references to other things, and just overall insanity. It's so good. I also, of course, love the cartoon where she's voiced by Kaylee Cuoco, the most recent one, which
I haven't even finished that yet.
No, I've only seen season 1, but I love it. And I love that she has the ability to swear and act vulgar more so than in previous TV versions and in the comics because it's aimed at adults, and it kind of flushes her character out perfectly.
Oh, yeah.
I also really love Tara Strong's version of her, which is a more child-friendly version because it's, it's an older child's cartoon, yeah. And that version of her is, her as being Joker's girlfriend, right? I also really enjoyed Margot Robbie's version, her second attempt. I didn't enjoy Suicide Squad because it's the worst film ever made. It destroyed my soul. But I did enjoy Harley in the Birds of Prey film.
Oh my god,
Margot Robbie did a really good job in that. And I think, they took a lot of notes from Amanda Connor, I think, in that. Because it was very similar to that.
Also, not to be that person, but it is because it was actually by a woman who enjoyed the comics.
Yeah.
That is why it was good, and it showed Harley Quinn being pure chaos.
Yeah, pure chaos is exactly the perfect word to describe her. So, it's not about her abilities and weapons and stuff that make her amazing. It is her personality. She is bubbly, energetic, charming. She often hides her demented mind behind a childish exterior, and she combines a flirtatious demeanor with a woman who is aware of her good looks and will use them to get what she wants.
Good for her.
She's also much more intelligent than she lets on, which often actually causes friends and foes alike to underestimate her. In the Mad Love storyline, she actually came closer to killing Batman than the Joker ever did.
Nice.
In addition to being a skilled manipulator, she's prone to explosive fits of rage and has a violent streak that almost rivals that of the Joker himself. The Joker was actually scared of her at some points. Unlike most versions of the Joker, however, most of Harley's incarnations do possess a rather softer side, and she's capable of like genuinely caring about others, including her pet hyenas, Bud and Lou. She treats them like her own children and calls them her babies, and she also genuinely loves Poison Ivy, whom she often nicknames Red or Pammy. The nature of their love depends on the incarnation, with some being portrayed as lovers, others close friends, and sometimes they act as family members. With Ivy often acting like the big, mature sister of the immature Harley. She's also very loyal to the people she cares about, but at the same time she struggles with the innate selfishness and sense of dependence. Her loyalty rarely ever like wavers, and she's really loyal to Ivy. And she was really loyal to the Joker when she was in the relationship with Joker before she realizes how like toxic he is as a human. And most of the versions of her, she is still with the Joker. Like that's like the go-to as the Joker's thing, but it's starting more and more to be after that, and her as her own character and as her own person. I just love it. And like on several occasions, she's actually sided with Batman and became one of his most trusted allies. And like worked with him to solve cases and stuff, despite Batman not liking that. But she finds it fun because that's the whole thing of her character. She's fun. Most versions of her attempts, like most of the newer versions, she's trying to leave her life of crime behind her, but only few have succeeded in doing that, and she can rarely escape from the destructive past completely. Harley's grandchildren followed in her footsteps in Return of the Joker, and after Joker's death in the Injustice series, he was revealed to still be her greatest fear when she was exposed to Scarecrow's fear gas.
Ugh.
So it's like there's a lot of PTSD and stuff like that in it, which is it's really clever. I strongly recommend reading the Harley Quinn from the New 52 and the Rebirth series, all the Amanda Conner stuff. Harley's Little Black Books is a great series. The Suicide Squad comic series is incredible too. Almost all of the Harley Quinn spin-offs and crossovers. For example, the Harley Quinn and Power Girl one's really good. All the ones with Poison Ivy. They're all clever, funny, break the fourth wall, and filled with brilliant action and jokes. Shall I just carry on? Because I've got the Joker next. And the Joker's, along the same lines.
I mean, I have another character which you have mentioned many times in that.
Go for it. We're going to have to be real quick because we're running out of time.
Well, you actually did say a lot about the character that I have, which
is
Poison Ivy. Just like you with Harley Quinn, one of my favourite depictions of Poison Ivy is the Harley Quinn TV series.
Yeah.
Because it's so good. She has such a monotonous way of looking at things. Like she...
like a moody teen almost.
Yeah, she is like your moody older sister that is so fed up of everything you're doing, but she sticks around because she has to make sure that you're alive at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So she was first introduced in the Batman comics by Robert Cania and Sheldon Moldoff. She was originally written as a love interest for Batman, but then after she was introduced into the comics, they then gave her, like, after more time, developed more of a character for her, and then she has now been included as a actual love interest of Harley Quinn's.
Yeah, and she's mostly portrayed as like a super eco villain.
Yeah, so I just love that she is actually a bisexual icon now. Like, I love her. She is a bisexual icon, whereas Harley Quinn is just a being of chaos. You could not put a sexuality on Harley Quinn. She is doing what she wants.
Yeah.
So something I saw about Poison Ivy that I love as a description of her, she is a misanthropic botanist and biochemist, as well as an extreme environmentalist.
Yeah, I love the term misanthrope, and I feel that I am also a misanthrope.
Yes, like, just in case you aren't aware of what the word means, it means that she basically dislikes the human race and what humans are about.
Yeah, humans suck.
Yeah, and that makes sense because she is an environmentalist. She is bonded with plants.
Yeah, that's why she ends up being a villain, because she's, trying to kill humans because humans are destroying the planet, and she actually wants that's not to happen.
Yeah. So her powers include the secretion of floral toxins and mind-controlling pheromones, immunity to toxins, or natural toxins, I will point out, and the ability to mentally control plants. So she got these powers after helping someone steal an Egyptian artifact that was containing these ancient herbs. He then attempts to poison her with these herbs, but she survives, and that's how she finds out that she has now gained the immunity.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I just think that's really cool. That's like so badass. Like you try and kill me with this plant. I am now plant.
I am now plant lady.
I just think she's such a cool character, and just the way that she is portrayed is incredible. I love her.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, so I'll go with the Joker now. So, supervillain created by Bill Finger, Bob Kane, and Jerry Robinson. First debuted in the comic book Batman in April 25th, 1940, published by DC Comics. So this is old. The credit for the Joker's creation is disputed. Kane and Robinson claimed responsibility for the Joker's design while acknowledging Finger's writing contribution. Although the Joker was planned to be killed off during his initial appearance, he was spared by editorial intervention, allowing the character to endure as the archenemy of the superhero Batman until, well, forever. In his comic book appearances, the Joker is portrayed as a criminal mastermind, introduced as a psychopath with a warped, sadistic sense of humour. The character became like a goofy prankster in the late 1950s in response to the regulation of the Comics Code Authority, before returning to his darker roots during the early 1970s. As Batman's nemesis, the Joker has been part of the superhero-defining stories, including the murder of Jason Todd, the second Robin, Batman's ward, and the paralysis of one of Batman's allies, Barbara Gordon. The Joker has had various possible origin stories during his decades of appearances. The most common story involves him falling into a tank of chemical waste that bleaches his skin white and turns his hair green and lips bright red, resulting in the disfigurement that drives him insane. He's the antithesis of Batman in personality and appearance. The Joker is considered by critics to be his perfect adversary. The Joker possesses no superhuman abilities. Instead, he uses his expertise in chemical engineering to develop poisonous or lethal concoctions and thematic weaponry, including razor-tipped playing cards, deadly joy buzzers, and acid-spraying lapel flowers. The Joker sometimes works with other Gotham City supervillains, such as Penguin and Two-Face, and groups like the Injustice Gang and the Justice League. But these relationships often collapse because the Joker's desire for just pure, unbridled chaos. Kind of similar to Harley Quinn. In the 90s, he was in the Harley Quinn was introduced for him basically as his like sidekick, but then she later escapes the abusive relationship, as I mentioned earlier. Although his primary obsession is Batman, the Joker has also fought other heroes, including Superman and Wonder Woman. One of the most iconic characters in popular culture is him, right? He is the go-to villain when you think about.
Yeah, definitely.
He's been listed among the greatest comic book villains and fictional characters ever created, despite the fact that he was almost killed off instantly.
Yeah.
The character's popularity has seen him appear on a variety of merchandise, clothing, collectible items, inspired real-world structures such as theme park attractions, and he's been referenced in all kinds of media. The Joker has been adapted to serve as Batman's adversary in live-action, animated, video game, like every kind of incarnation you could think of. Including the 1960s Batman television series played by Cesar Romero, films by Jack Nicholson in 1989, Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight, which is my favourite portrayal ever of all time. Heath Ledger's Dark Knight, like him as the Joker, was phenomenal. In 2008, he was played by Joaquin Phoenix in The Joker, again, really clever. I love the way he did it too. And both Ledger and Phoenix earned Academy Awards for their portrayals. Heath Ledger being the first person ever to do it after he died. Mark Hamill and Troy Baker have also done voice acting for him. Mark Hamill's voice acting as the Joker is just ridiculously good. It's so good. So yeah, his abilities: genius intellect, he's a brilliant chemist and inventor. He has an arsenal of comedy-themed gadgets, deception. He's an expert hand-to-hand combatant, and he regularly uses like thugs to work for him and stuff. And he has these really just clever, extreme like schemes. The Killing Joke by Alan Moore is meant to be one of the best comics ever made, and I haven't read it. but I have to. I will, because it's like it's meant to be one of the best comics ever made, and it's a Joker comic, so I need to read it. I'm gonna buy it as soon as I can. He was also ranked 8th on Empire's greatest comic book character of all time list, being the highest ranked villain on the list. He's also 5th greatest comic book character ever in Wizard magazine, and the highest ranked villain again on Wizard magazine's villain list as being the number 1 villain of all time. So yeah, from the media to the films and his relationship with the Dark Knight, the Joker's personality could be, it's obvious. He's homicidal, psychopathic, ruthless, sadistic, maniacal. He's a lunatic. He's manipulative. He's intelligent. He's diabolical. He wants
that as a term for him. Diabolical.
Yeah, he wants nothing but chaos and anarchy. And I kind of relate to this.
And to kill the Batman.
No, he doesn't want to kill the Batman. That's the thing. He doesn't want to kill the Batman.
Sorry, I was making the joke.
So, in most speaking roles, the Joker's often given like a really high-pitched, comical, bouncy, silly voice that occasionally stoops down to like a growl in accordance to his clown-like appearance and the maniacal personality. There has been some exceptions to this, but they're not that good. Like, the Tim Burton one. But it's still a humorous voice. The Joker's infamous brutality and insane nature was such that the Gotham criminal element feared him far more than they feared Batman.
Yeah.
Citing that while Batman was merely scary, Joker was downright terrifying and was even willing to inform the Batman of his location just to get rid of him. So villains would tell Batman where the Joker was so that... Oh no, the other way...
Joker
exactly that way.
Tell Batman.
Yeah, the villains would be working to help Batman get rid of the Joker because they're so scared of him.
Yes.
And vice versa, I guess, in many ways. But his malevolent, sadistic sense of humor and psychopathic tendency of murdering whoever he wants depicts him as the greatest Batman foe ever. Not even Poison Ivy or Two-Face can beat the Joker. He's just badass despite having no powers. He's a genius, but uses intelligence for evil schemes. Although, like I said earlier, he has no plan to kill Batman. He just, as he says, he just has so much fun playing his little games. The Joker also likes to corrupt his enemies in various media, and that's perfectly shown in the Dark Knight movie when he manipulates Harvey Dent into getting revenge on those who were involved in Rachel's death, and creates Two-Face in the thing to make more anarchy and chaos. In the Dark Knight trilogy and the Batman Arkhamverse, there are 2 personality sides of the Joker and there's his diabolically devious side, shown in the Arkhamverse, his psychopathically ruthless side, shown in the trilogies. It's just all of this chaos and sadism and stuff like that, and all this just murderous behavior. He is just pure chaos. It's brilliant. He also has some on and off alliances with some other Batman villains like Two-Face, Penguin, Catwoman, etc., which are all some of the greatest villains ever made. The Batman villains are phenomenal. He also has a tendency of cheating death and escaping Arkham Asylum all the time to create more chaos.
Well, obviously.
Yeah. In The Dark Knight, and possibly for any other portrayal of the Joker, or for that matter, Alfred Pennyworth is right about the Joker, implying him as being one of the men who want to watch the world burn. It's such a great quote from The Dark Knight, like I said, but it kind of works for all of the versions of him. The Joker actually wants to corrupt Batman by causing greater tragedies in his life so that he can get Batman to kill him or make Batman like him. Even though the Dark Knight is shown to be incorruptible and stick to his moral code of not murdering his enemies and having them receive justice instead, the Joker never gives up because the more tragedies he causes, the more Batman will get angrier at the Joker and thus risk breaking his code. That's all the Joker wants. Yeah. He doesn't want rules. The Joker has a vicious mind. He tortures his enemies and uses them as puppets. Even his friends, like Harley Quinn, he tortures and uses as just manipulates her all the time, and uses her for his schemes. And
basically, would nearly kill her at any point. If
yeah,
it just is.
And he regularly just slaps her and belittles her and all that sort of stuff all the time. But the Joker also takes a lot of pride in his crimes, often freely admitting and taking credit for the crimes he commits. In fact, he's done it so many times that usually a surefire sign that the Joker is actually innocent of a crime is when the Clown Prince of Crime actually denies any involvement in it. So, in more recent incarnations, presumably due to the popularity of the version by Heath Ledger, the Joker also frequently says, "Let's put a smile on that face," or similar phrases when about to harm someone physically.
Yeah.
He also tends to have a lot of henchmen dressed as clowns or similar. That tend to be treated not very well, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Only other thing I have to say about the Joker is that Jared Leto's Joker needs to be erased from reality. Heath Ledger's Joker is possibly the best ever done, followed closely by Mark Hamill and Joaquin Phoenix. And obviously they all wouldn't exist without the many amazing comic portrayals before that. We're basically out of time, so I'm going to...
Yes.
Have you got another one on your list?
I did, but I'm just gonna...
Just go for it.
It's fine.
No, just go for it. What was it?
Like, I'm gonna be able to top the Joker with this. It's Bane.
Oh, okay. Well, Bane's on my honourable mentions as well.
Yeah, specifically the version of him in the Harley Quinn show. Like,
It's
I'm
just
not gonna
funny.
go. I'm not gonna go into like too much detail about
Yeah.
it. Just in the Harley Quinn TV series, the best thing is that at any point he is the butt of the joke.
Yeah.
But like he is seen as the joke to the Legion of Doom.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like he's not so bad at being a villain that they can get rid of him. So they keep him along, but he will always be the worst of the villains according to the rest of the villains, and I love it.
Yeah.
So yeah, also just shout out to Tom Hardy for his depiction of Bane because it was good.
I also like, I mean, all of the depictions of like Bane, Two-Face, Penguin, pretty much all of like the A-list Batman villains are really good. Like,
Yeah.
and they're great characters. I also love Lobo as a character. Have to mention him. Deathstroke, Deadshot, pretty much all of the Suicide Squad A-listers and the Suicide Squad in general. I also love Nightwing, Lex Luthor, Cyborg from the Teen Titans and the Justice League, and I also love Teen Titans in general, specifically Raven and Starfire. They're awesome, like from the comics and the original cartoon. And also the Joker Who Laughs, who's like a really new character.
Yeah.
It's it's from a different universe where Batman gets turned into the Joker.
Yeah.
And it's just absolute horrific, dark, terrible Joker Batman hybrid that is just it's really clever. It's brilliant. I definitely recommend reading that comic series, Joker Who Laughs. Wow, we went a bit over time there.
That's okay.
There's other characters I would have liked to have mentioned, but yeah, we'll have to leave it there, I guess.
We limited it as much as we could.
Yeah, right. We'll have to leave you there. I hope you enjoyed these two comic issues that we did on these cool comic characters.
Yeah, it has been fun, especially looking into a field that I'm not very well versed in.
Oh, I'm pretty passionate about it. Yeah, if you have any other characters you wanna mention or just tell us your favorite, please let us know at the As Yet Untitled Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff.
Yeah. Next week we're gonna be
not next week. In a couple weeks' time.
In a couple weeks. Sorry, I'm used to saying next week. In a couple weeks' time we'll be. We're in December, so we are going to be releasing a Christmas episode.
Yeah, Christmas special.
Yeah, little holiday special for you. Talking about our favourite Christmas films.
Yeah, back to a film episode, because we love our films.
It's where I'm at least at my best.
I'm not a massive Christmas film fan, but we'll talk about that in that episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that'll be the final one of the year. Nice Christmas episode.
Yep. And then we'll come back at you in the new year.
Yeah. Right. Love you guys. You best be following us and subscribing and all that jazz.
Tell your friends.
Hell yeah. Share.
Share, like, subscribe. Download.
#AYup.
Bye.
Bye.